Welcome back to Restless. I'm Father Joseph Gill, priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, Connecticut, and you've joined myself, Paul, and Lauren as together we restlessly seek the face of Christ in the midst of today's often rationalistic world. Rationalistic in the sense that it doesn't often recognize that there is a supernatural world out there, right? Sometimes it just says like all you got is just the material world, which kind of stinks. That would be very depressing if that's all we believed.
Very true.
But one of the evidences that we have sometimes for the supernatural world is miracles. And, over the course of the 2,000-year history of our church, there's been an incredible amount of miracles. And sometimes even regular, ordinary people experience miracles. So I'm curious if you guys have ever experienced a miracle.
Would you say a vision is a miracle?
Oh, yeah, definitely a vision's a miracle, yeah.
Okay, so when I was 1 but not yet 2, I started pointing up in the sky and I would say, "There's Mary."
Wow.
And my mom went, "What is she doing?" And she was very alarmed, I believe. And I would say, "She's smiling at me."
Wow.
That's cool.
Do you have any memory of that yourself?
I do not.
Oh, that's too bad.
I was too little. But I think I have a sense of like the feeling. And I can imagine it, I guess, but I don't know if what I'm imagining is what I saw or it's just my imagination. So I would have no idea that happened if my parents didn't tell me.
That's wild.
It is wild,
Wow.
right? And my dad doesn't believe it. So there you go. My
Really?
dad, I believe, is too rational to accept that I may have seen Mary.
That's amazing, because why would a 1-year-old make up something like that? How could you make up something like that?
And people often say to me, "You were too little, you were 1." But I started speaking before I was 1.
Really?
Yeah, just like a word or like little stuff. But so
not sentence.
when I'm saying I was 1 but not yet 2, I don't know how many months old I was. But
Okay,
I mean that
almost
was
2
just it's 2 words, right? And clearly she told me who she was
Yeah.
because I couldn't have known. I mean, I obviously maybe my parents would show me this is Mary and Jesus, right? But yeah,
That's wild.
So that's always been like a great comfort to me. Like, wow. But what I think though is like every baby sees spirits, Mary, Jesus, right? Because they're often staring up at the light and they're new into this world. And I think that they are much more spiritually connected than we are.
Well, there's a story of, Padre Pio, when he got older, he was having a conversation with his parents, I guess, and his parents were saying, you were such a fussy baby. You cried all the time. And he said, yeah, it's because I was seeing demons. And he thought that's why every baby cried, because they were seeing demons.
I love one of his stories where he like woke up in the middle of the night and the devil was standing there, and he just looks at it and says, "Oh, it's just you," and he goes back to bed.
That is pretty awesome.
Yes,
He's like, I'm
yeah, at a certain point,
Yeah.
even everything becomes mundane.
yeah. Anyway,
And when you recognize like Christ has power over everything, or a different priest stories like Father Miguel Rodriguez in Montreal, like he talks about how he would see the devil and demonic, like he saw hovering above his house when he got home, and a friend was with him and saw it as well, and the friend was terrified, and he just says, "Oh, it's nothing," and he just makes a sign of the cross up in the sky, and it vanishes.
Whoa,
It's gone.
it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. So to your opening comments about rationalism, I have a lot of thoughts about this.
Will you share them?
No, not at all. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I think that there's been a lot of. So I think there's 2 sides of this argument. So there's a side that's a very anti-rationalistic. You could be as much as the age of the rationalism, which came in the past 300-400 years or so, has poked holes in a lot of what religious people, not even Christianity, but most religions would believe in, which is fine.
Like, for example, that the Earth is the center of the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're not geocentric. We are heliocentric.
Right.
Thank you. And so, but I do think that just because I do think that, okay, so you can come up with a rational argument for things, like a scientific argument, to use a more precise term in this particular circumstance, or you can come up with like that it's a miracle, that it's from God. But I always struggled with the concept that it's either or. Right? The Lord created everything, and everything works under His dominion. And so there was a priest who gave, I don't know if he was a priest yet, he was in seminary, I believe, at the time. He's probably a priest now. It was a Frazzati retreat, and it was a CFR brother at the time. I think he's a priest now. He's ordained. But in any case, he was talking about how there's this whole scientific study about the manna, the bread from heaven in the Old Testament, how it was like it combined with, it was like barley that had blown in and combined with like a morning dew and created like this thing. And he's like, yeah, isn't God great? Like, even it's true, isn't God great? Isn't that awesome? Isn't God's creation that would provide that awesome? Or if there was some big, I don't know what it was, like some big earthquake which created a big receding in the Red Sea, like a big receding tide in, before a tidal wave, that's what actually happened with Moses parting the Red Sea.
So it's just really the miracle was the timing. That it happened
Or
right there.
It could be like, okay, it's like, well, isn't God great? Like, you could still, even if you had a very precise, rational argument for a scientific reason for what something happened, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that it's not divine.
That's true.
And I think that there's a misconception there that it's you either have completely science or you have, actually, I think it goes too far sometimes. People go too far in the other direction. It's like anti-science. It's like, no, that was not scientific. That was just divine. It's like, well, it's still working in the natural order of things and what was in divine creation. So it's like both can be true sometimes. Maybe not all the time, but sometimes it can be.
Yeah. That's funny. I'd heard a different explanation for the manna. I heard that it was the secretions of an insect.
That's another one.
There's apparently an insect called the tamarisk manna scale. It's like little bug or something that secretes something that's very sweet and apparently looks somewhat like manna, which kind of is a gross thought.
Yeah, I don't know. They called it bread, so I mean, I've heard a few different ones on that one. But in any case, it's just like, okay, great.
You have a valid point. However,
I'm about to say something to completely refute the fact that you have a valid point.
The definition of miracle is a surprising and welcome event that is not explicable by natural or scientific laws and is therefore considered to be the work of a divine agency.
Great. That can be true too. I'm not saying every miracle has to, that would be rationalism. Every miracle has to be rationalized with scientific evidence.
Yeah.
Right? I'm saying that if something is rationalized with scientific evidence, doesn't mean it's not divinely inspired. And okay, maybe it's not a miracle in that particular definition, but it could be miraculous.
Yes, I agree. My favorite, I believe, kinds of miracles are Eucharistic miracles.
Ah, yes.
When I first started to learn of these, they blew my mind. Like, wow, God's showing us, like, yes, the Eucharist is truly his body and blood. And there's, over 150 documented Eucharistic miracles from all over the world, and some still exist. And so when I encounter people who don't believe for a long time, I would bring up miracles. And I talked to one atheist over the summer, I guess, and I brought this up. And he's like, prove it to me, like, show me. So then I tried to show the picture, maybe from Lanciano. And then he's like, what am I looking at? Right? Because it is unclear, bloody host or, and I'm like telling him, like, this was a host, right? And it started to bleed, but it just doesn't translate. It's hard. And then they'll say, well, I have to see it. Or who said that it's, type AB blood, high white blood cell count.
Yeah.
Who's saying this? Like, they need to know who are the scientists that are saying it, because they distrust everything. Whereas I just see it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah, but I think for people, so we grew up in a rationalistic age. That's how we grew up. When you go to school, you learn science, you learn math, and then most people don't have religion class. There's nothing to tie it together. And even in Catholic school, I went to Catholic school 10 years, and religion class was completely separate from all the other classes. And I think there's schools probably like Cardinal Kung that are trying to merge a lot of this stuff together, where you can have physical and metaphysical descriptions for things and explanations and things, which is important. But I would say that one of the things I did learn in Catholic school, and I don't know if it's necessarily true, I don't necessarily believe this, but I think it's mostly true, where miracles are a great way to affirm and increase your faith. But I think you have to have faith first for them to make like a very meaningful difference. I don't think that's always true, but I think it's probably generally true.
Yeah.
Like for your friend, that one miracle, because we grew up in a rationalistic age, we're not thinking, we never think, even probably all three of us, we never think metaphysically first. We have been completely brought up in a physical age where we always think about what are the things, and the church does it too. When the church has a Eucharistic miracle, they look at all the rational explanations. They exhaust everything, and then they don't really affirm like you should believe in this or you have to, but it's plausible. Like essentially, it's plausible.
Mm-hmm.
But they will exhaust all the scientific reasoning for it first.
I think the miracle in itself has to be accompanied with grace.
Yeah,
Grace gives us
Yeah.
faith, right? I mean, two people could see the same miracle and one have a powerful experience and one not.
Right.
You know, this past weekend I was with a seminarian hiking with him, a guy from Columbus, Ohio, and he was telling me that 4 years ago he was an atheist. I was like, wow, okay, now you're a seminarian. Tell me your story.
Yeah.
You know, he went on this retreat. His girlfriend at the time was devout Catholic and said, you know, you got to go on this retreat. He went on this retreat, and as the Eucharist was coming around in a monstrance, he saw rays that were red and white, much like the Divine Mercy image, kind of coming out of it, and he heard a voice speaking to him saying, come to me. Like you're looking for me as your happiness. But he also received, obviously at that moment, the gift of faith, the gift of grace, which is a gift from God. And so he's like, okay, I'm not going to, because it'd be very easy to come out of that experience and be like, man, what were they smoking in that room?
Yeah.
Right? You know, I just had this like trippy experience. Must have been something that was drugged. Maybe it was just the emotional high, or, you know, you can explain it with rationalistic means. But he was given the gift of faith to see, no.
Yeah.
This actually was a real encounter with God.
Yeah. Right. And then that miracle that he had can then grow.
Yeah.
Or that experience that he has, I should say, can then grow into something.
Right.
Right. So,
and
I
even,
agree.
you know, when in our own personal lives, we have that encounter with God in prayer, like maybe we feel a consolation, we maybe give the gifts of tears or something. Could it have a physical explanation? Yeah, absolutely. You know, when you're around a lot of people that are having an immense emotional experience, you're probably going to get swept up in the emotion too. But that doesn't make it less of a real encounter with God, who uses this very natural physical reaction to get across his love.
Right. So like back to what I said, there could be a rationalistic and like a physical and metaphysical description or explanation for a particular situation.
Now, you never answered the question, Paul, as to whether or not you've had a miracle.
Oh,
in your life.
So I don't know. I was thinking about this, and I'm extremely rationalistic. That is my MO, which is a problem sometimes. But I don't know. So I was actually a twin in the womb, and my mom had a miscarriage.
Another twin. We just had an episode on twins.
Yeah, so I was a twin apparently, and my mom had a miscarriage. She always had struggled to conceive and all that. So when she had the miscarriage, again, it was like she's devastated. But she goes to the doctor and they do an ultrasound. They're like, no, you still have one, and that was me.
That was you. Okay.
Yeah. So there you go.
So you were saved.
I was saved
from
something. From whatever I don't know what the function is, but in any case, so that's that. And I think there's a lot of small things in our lives that are miraculous, and we don't necessarily realize them until after the fact.
So what's the difference then between a miracle and a coincidence, or some call it a God incidence, right?
Yeah,
he kind of arranges circumstances that are improbable.
Yeah, but who cares?
What do you mean? Who cares?
If you recognize it's divine and you have faith in that, then like we're just putting words around things. Yeah, that's faith. So.
Right. So I guess somebody without faith will say, "Well, it's just a coincidence." And someone with faith
I don't believe in coincidence. There's no such thing as luck.
Most people say it's a coincidence.
Yeah, they would.
Well, coincidence just means coincidence. It's two things happening at the same time. But like, so yeah. Sure.
Thank you for the etymology.
It is something that's happening at the same time. But yeah, I mean, I don't believe in. I remember I was watching Mother Angelica live once, and she talked about an entire hour about like luck, this like concept of luck, and she says there is no luck. That was the conclusion. It's okay, you got lucky, but that's because this is from God.
Yes, because everything comes from God, and He's constantly sustaining us.
Right. So it's like, okay, so is it a miracle or is it a divine coincidence? I think something like that is what you were saying. It's like, okay, I don't care.
Right.
But you recognize it as divine.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important part.
It's not a miracle. A God incidence is not a miracle, but it's God leading you into something. And if you have a spiritual life, then you will recognize it as God leading you. And you're also more open to it. If you don't, even a practicing Catholic, but if you're not fully open or if you're apprehensive, you'll just say, oh, that was a coincidence. And they could be really minor things, you know.
Sure.
But I think we can recognize it. Like what happens to me often is I'll be considering, like, should I go to this or should I go to that? Should I go to Mass at St. Cecilia's at 7:30? well, I want to sleep in, but I always want to sleep in. Well, no, but I can get the rest of these things done if I go to St. John's at noon. So I go to St. John's for the 12:10 Mass, and then I run into this guy who was so happy to see me because he was supposed to get his number. He was supposed to get my number for his fiance, who's from Argentina and has no friends. And he said this to me several times now. Florencia has no friends. I'm like, I'll be your friend. But we need each other's numbers in order to actually meet up. So it was like, oh, he thought he blew it like again, and who knows when he's going to see me. But then we were able to exchange numbers and have this nice walk. And then I met up with his fiance the following Saturday, and we had a lovely time.
Oh, good.
She even invited me to come to her wedding in Argentina.
Oh, you should go. You gotta go. You gotta go. I've been to a wedding in Argentina. It's the
She's
best.
like, if you want to come, you can come. And
That's the way it is.
Oh,
no,
man.
that's the way it is
Now,
with Argentine weddings. They just say, everyone come.
And also, this man is a professional pilot, so you could probably get free tickets.
I don't know about that,
Maybe.
but I think the
private
trip
jet.
may be worth it. But
It's a really cheap country, so it's a good thing. But anyway,
it was just a great God incident,
Yeah.
right? Like I can recognize that and say, because I was deliberating about my day, I ended up there. I think I'm choosing it, but here we go. God brought us together, and look at all the good that's coming from it, and hopefully we'll build a stronger friendship, and I'm really excited about that.
so I had a recent one. This is silly, but could be.
But God cares about even our
Yeah.
small
So
stuff,
like,
you know?
I have this, my ongoing saga with my 20-year-old Mini Cooper, which is a British German car because it's made by BMW, and it's just terrible. It's everything that could be wrong with it is, and I'm like,
It looks pretty cool, though.
it's a really fun car to drive. I
Yeah,
love
I bet it
It's
is.
like a little toddler. Like he really makes you angry sometimes, but then it just delights your heart.
He's so
Anyway,
cute, yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so I don't know why. I just decided the battery's actually in the trunk, underneath like the carpet of the trunk. That's where they put the battery. It's
Okay.
common in German cars. Anyway, so I just decided one day I'm just gonna look back there. I'm just gonna open it up, and the battery is sitting in like 2 or 3 inches of water.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Could be an issue.
So I had to extract. I took my oil extractor and I extracted the water out of the car. And now I actually got a car wash today to see if it filled back up. It's bad.
Did it?
Electric and water don't. I actually haven't looked.
Oh,
I did look. It was too soon though. It was too soon. So anyway, so yeah. So I would say that. So it's like, is that a miracle?
No.
No, but it's
No.
important because that could catch on fire and kill me.
True.
Yeah. You were saved from something potentially.
well, I've
You
once.
have miracles?
Well, I was going to say, I once read a quote that said that a coincidence is just God's way of remaining anonymous.
That's good.
Thought that was kind of a good.
Yeah.
Have I had a miracle? No, nothing that's supernatural that can't be explained through human means. Plenty of coincidences or God incidences in my life, but I know a number of others who have had real miracles.
Real miracles,
particularly, yeah. And I think especially as it gets more difficult to follow Christ and to have faith, there might be more signs.
Yeah.
In today's world, and this has happened to me like 3 times already, where just in the course of conversation, somebody will say, "Oh yeah, I've had visions," and like now there's sometimes when people say that you're like, let's change the topic. But then there's sometimes because the person's actually very sane and very rational and not in any way a flake, you're like, tell me more. And so they tell me more, and I'm like, wow, that's really quite incredible. Like kind of like the story like you were saying, Lauren, how maybe God will speak. Like I remember this one young man here at the school where I teach. He was just talking about something in class, and he's like, yeah, I've Jesus has spoken to me. I'm like,
Wow.
all right, let's talk more. So after class, I'm like, dude, you can't just like lay that bomb and not like explain it. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. So he's like, well, yeah. He told me that like one day he's laying in bed and he hears his name, and he gets up and he's like, who called my name? And he's from a big family. He's like one of 7. He's like, who called my name? And everyone else is dead asleep in the entire house. So he lays down, happens again. So 3 times, kind of very biblical, right? And that was Saturday night, and the next day was Sunday. And of course, the scripture reading was Samuel being called 3 times by God in the middle of the night. And he's like, what the heck? That's weird, right?
Yeah.
So stuff like that, or other people who have had really
I have.
powerful
I've
experiences.
never, to answer your question, I've never had anything.
So you never had a miracle.
I don't think so.
Oh, that's okay. I think God gives miracles to those who really desperately need them. Because I think if your faith is strong, you may not need it for your faith. I mean, why did Jesus do so many miracles while he was on earth? It wasn't just to provide free healthcare and free food. right? Because that's what the Democrats do.
Was to increase faith. Ooh, I like that.
I'm sorry.
Ooh. See woke.
No, it was, yeah, see, well, no, it's because that's what increases faith, right? He was trying to get people to believe that he really is the Son of God, but they wouldn't believe unless they saw these things that were so out of the ordinary. A man walking on water, raising the dead, like things that were just so outside the normal realm of possibilities.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be that was it all cases or most at least where the person who was directly affected by the miracle, like the blind man see and the demons leaving the possessed, whatever, they had faith, or their representatives had faith first.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so it goes back to our prior discussion. But it doesn't, but the people, the third parties, the bystanders, it increased their faith.
Exactly.
Or at least made them ask themselves or question or whatever.
Right. I mean, think about their reaction, right? No one's ever spoken, no one's ever done things like this. You know, he multiplies bread and fish and they'd come to try to make him king. So yeah, they're having some, like a real question of like, who is this man?
Yeah.
So perhaps so why do you think we don't see as many miracles? Even if you look at the lives of the saints, you know, it seems like the 1200s and 1300s had a heck of a lot of miracles and we don't. Is it because we're rationalistic? Or is it because we miss them, or we don't identify the miracles that do happen?
Maybe. Yeah, that could be it. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, so for the rationalism, I don't see it. Some people, like I said, there's anti-rationalists who see it as like a big problem. I don't think it is. Like that's what happened. That's what has happened with human development, whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
I think not recognizing the divine, or at least trying to seek it, is the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, I don't think it. Yeah. So I mean, do we need miracles now? I think we need serious miracles now. But you know, I think that we get them. Maybe we're just poor at identifying them.
That's possible.
I think so.
So, in order to be a Christian, do you need to believe in miracles?
The biblical ones, probably at a minimum, right?
I would say definitely the resurrection.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, can't be a Christian without that. But like modern day, like, I mean, because I know some Christians who wouldn't believe in some of these miraculous things.
Well, because it's personal revelation, right?
Yeah, private revelation.
Private revelation.
It shows a lack of faith, right? How could you accept that Jesus died and resurrected and God is all good and all loving and leading us to him, but not accept some of these, let's say, more major, well-known miracles throughout the church, whether it's Eucharistic miracles or appearances of Our Lady throughout the world?
Sure.
Right? There's a disconnect happening there.
Yeah.
Or even the miracles that you yourself experience.
Yeah. I think those are the most important, because we don't have to believe in private revelation.
Right.
I think we're asked not to refute it, but we don't have to have the devotion to it. I think that's probably the best way of saying it.
That's true. That's true.
Why is that so hard, though? Because you can't explain it in your tiny little brain. Meanwhile, you know that God is infinite and so much smarter than you.
Yeah, but we're all human, and we all have these like traits and
very much formed by our culture. I think.
Yeah, and culture, but also we have like there's things that some people brains work differently, and so like mine, I have to question. I'm a skeptic. I'm a cynical skeptic. It's like the worst possible way you could possibly be, and that's the way I am.
And yet, yeah, but you believe in God and you believe in miracles. I mean,
what else is there? Where else am I going to go?
That's a fair question.
Despair.
Yeah, it's terrible. It sounds terrible. I've been in despair. It's unpleasant.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the other option. Yeah, that's true. So, speaking about the lives of the saints, I mean, do you know what are some of your favorite miracle stories from the lives of the saints?
I like St. John Cupertino flying.
Joseph Cupertino.
Joseph, what'd I say?
John.
Oh, Joseph, yeah.
Yeah.
Flying. Like that.
Yeah, levitation, that's pretty clear that's God.
Yep.
Right there.
There's a lot of stories about St. Vincent de Paul. Or St. Vincent Ferrer.
Oh, like what?
Like he stopped somebody falling.
That's cool.
From the church in Manhattan.
Wait, from the church in Manhattan?
No, what is it? He was in Manhattan, right?
No.
His
famous church is in Manhattan. He never lived there.
Church in wherever in.
I think it was Spain or
France.
Hold on, the Google knows all.
Anyway, there's a story. Regardless of where he was, I'm connecting it to the church on Lex and 72nd or whatever it is. But he like stopped somebody from falling.
That's cool.
Yeah, but then it went in to get permission if he was allowed to, and then came back out and did it.
Yeah, he lived in France.
France.
Brittany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Wasn't that
awesome.
the Celtic area? Like way out west?
Brittany, yeah, I think that's northwest. Isn't that where the D-Day was?
Normandy.
Normandy. Sorry, my bad. I don't. I'm 3/4 French too. I should know my French geography.
Yeah. Maybe.
I think stigmata has always impressed me.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's
Wow,
cool.
whether it's visible or mystical, that, I mean, not only Jesus bore the suffering of the passion, literally, obviously, but that an ordinary person, I guess, right? Because we're all human, that people can be so holy to become that close to Christ.
Yeah.
So, like St.
What?
Catherine of Siena.
And to have it for so many years.
Why did
Yeah.
Padre Pio always wear gloves?
I don't know.
Because he had the stigmata.
He did have stigmata.
But he'd always wear
bleeding
gloves.
palms,
What?
bleeding, because he's bleeding.
Oh, maybe.
yeah,
Is that probably?
he was bleeding, but not only bleeding, I think he didn't want people to be super curious
Okay.
and just gawk at him,
Yeah.
which a lot of them did, sadly.
I see.
And saints who go to heaven and purgatory, that to me is so cool.
Yeah.
Like Padre Pio.
St. Faustina has some good
Oh, St.
stories.
Faustina too.
Yeah, of her visions of heaven, hell, and purgatory.
That's cool.
That's pretty cool. Now, here's the last question for you. It might be the trickiest of all. What do you say to somebody who's asking for a miracle and it doesn't happen, or believing a miracle and it doesn't happen? For example, when Lauren and I were on prayer teams, which we referenced in a former episode, there was one particular young girl who came forward with a pretty serious illness, and we prayed over her, and it was really, really intense. And afterwards, her mom told me, she's like, "Wow, I so-and-so think, her daughter said that she felt like God healed her. And so her faith was so strengthened. And then she went to the doctor and she wasn't healed." So what do you say to that? Like when you're expecting a miracle, when you have the faith, when you're like, Jesus says faith can move mountains. Okay, well, I have pretty good faith. I've never moved a mountain.
That's hard. I mean, it's great. It sounds like she felt the presence of God and the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
which is an amazing grace to be given. But it's like our expectations are not the same as God's.
Yeah.
We can't understand everything, and we never will. And, you've said before, right? Some people's illnesses aren't cured. Some people don't get better, or they seem to get better and then they get worse again, and then they die, right? But at the end of it, like, not to make light of that, but we're all going to heaven, hopefully. The goal is heaven.
Yeah.
So
And God's not a vending machine.
he's not, and he sanctifies us in the ways that we need sanctifying. And we all have a different path to holiness. And it's probably not the path that we foresee. Like, oh, if I do these things, this is how I become holy.
Yeah.
But I don't know what's best for me. Only God does. So I would imagine that would be very difficult, but it requires trust in God and his will and his plan.
It does. And what strikes me is, this was a 6th grade girl who might now be struggling in her faith because of that.
Yes.
I'm like, God, like now she's questioning your existence, perhaps because of
Yeah.
this lack of a miracle here.
Hopefully she'll just be reinforced that God loves her.
Yeah.
First and foremost, don't doubt that. Don't let the devil enter in there, and just continue to move forward, because there could be a later healing. She could, I don't know, learn to cope with the illness better. Like, things could improve.
Yeah.
Or because it doesn't, maybe she's drawn into a different kind of a prayer life. Who knows?
I know that the scripture quote that kept coming back to me the next day when I heard the bad news that she wasn't cured was, God says, I think in Isaiah, my ways are not your ways, and my thoughts are so much higher than your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God does not owe us an explanation for why he does what he does.
And all we offered was to pray for her, Like, we didn't say, you will be healed. Or
True.
Doing this is what will get you a healing.
Right.
Just a prayer.
Now, I know I do not have the gift of healing,
Yeah.
which is a supernatural gift that some people have, but not me.
Maybe she was healed for something else. You don't know.
That's true.
Maybe it's a mental wound, emotional wound, maybe.
Yeah. Just given the grace to carry it further,
Yeah.
Who knows? God's ways.
Well,
are
God
mysterious.
always answers our prayers, but the answer is yes, no, or not now.
That's
Yeah.
very true. Amen.
And oh my God, you are amazing, is what I meant to say earlier. Right? Like an exclamation of just God's goodness and amazement.
Yeah.
I think we kind of lack that when we're talking about this rationalizing that we tend to do. We're like knocking God down, I think, a little bit lower. than the true glory and goodness and praise that he deserves.
Amen. He can and does break into human history and do things that suspend the laws of nature. And that's really cool when he does.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Restless. Keep your eyes out for miracles that may happen in your own life, whether it's a small miracle that can be explained through reason, or maybe it's something that's a little more supernatural that really can't be. But God is still on the move, and that's what our faith tells us, and we trust in that. You can find us on Veritas Catholic Network, 1350 AM or 103.9 FM, and wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in next time.